we have to talk about the young, dynamic recruiters that are starting to emerge on Badgers football, plus Tanjay and Crowler with the Jazz. Let's talk about it all. Locked On Badgers, let's go.
You are Locked On Badgers, your daily podcast on the Wisconsin Badgers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is going on, Badger fans? Welcome to Locked On Badgers, your team every single day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Ryan Herrings. Thank you for being every day or making this one of your first listens. Today's episode brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code Locked On College at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. Today's episode, we are talking about some of the young, dynamic recruiters that are starting to emerge on this football coaching staff. We got to hit on John Tanjay, Stephen Crowell, and some Q&A, including what does Kinzinger need to do to see the field this year? What if Hopkins hits his upside and the upside of that receiver room that's starting to come out? But first, I was thinking about this the other day, and I wanted to talk about it. I brought it up a couple times, but I wanted to specifically focus on it. The Badgers have a young, in many ways, coaching staff. There's some veterans on there for sure. You know, a guy like Tressel, Mitchell, Paul Haynes. But you're looking at a guy like Coach Spalding, Coach Reed, Coach Guyton, Coach Cooper, Coach Whitlow. There's some younger guys here. And then some of them I feel like are really emerging as recruiters, are starting to emerge as recruiters with the help of guys like Coach Zilm, who's phenomenal, and Pat Lambert and Thompson and Rybach. Rybach. It's all these guys they have. But look at Coach. Let's start with Coach Blazek, right? You talking about a guy who last cycle big time wins for Logan Powell, big time win for Hardy Watts, big time win in evaluation for Nolan Davenport. And I know this year hasn't gone perfectly. But the players I've talked to, 4-star guys that have gone up there, Leo Delaney and Kevin Obot, they're going up there mostly because of AJ Blazek. He's a really, really good recruiter. And along with Brady Collins, who the big men love, they've got kind of an ace in their hole there with what AJ Blazek is able to do. That's a big-time recruiting guy there. Then let's go look at Coach Spalding. What has Spalding done in his time? And I'm bringing this up because it feels like if this program can turn the corner and start winning a little bit with the group of coaches and recruiters that they have, this thing could get into another level. It could gear up. And you look at Coach Spo, right? Darion Dupree, that was a 4-star win, a big win. Dylan Jones, that was a big win. Dylan Jones was a massive win. Gideon Atuka, really good eval, nice win there. He just won Amari Latimer. And again, all of this happens with the combination of a lot of players, a lot of people in the recruiting department. It's never one coach, but positional coaches matter a lot when it's the position you're recruiting. You know, Coach Spo's got some big wins under his belt now, some big 4-star type wins for out-of-state talent. That's the thing. You know, he wasn't recruiting a John Clay in state, a Melvin Gordon in state. You know, these are all out-of-state wins. And really the same when you look at a guy like AJ Blazek. He's gotten some in-state guys for sure, but a lot of out-of-state wins too. That's going to get a little easier, especially with the 27 class coming up that's filled with talent. Then let's go look at a Coach Reed. You know, Coach Eric Reed just coming in as receivers coach. Man, he just crushed this cycle so far. Just crushed it. You know, you land a Jaden Petit, who's a 4-star Florida kid who we talked about a couple times, but also you get Legree up here, who had been committed to Ole Miss. There's a lot of speed. Tayshawn Bardo's a guy who could be like the glue cohesive guy that brings it all together. And one of the things we heard about with which Coach Reed when he came on board was this is a guy who is going to probably be able to recruit really well. He connects well with players. That's something we talked about. That was the reputation that he had. Feels like a pretty good recruiter. Now, we still got to coach and we still got to develop and we still got to scheme, but none of that matters if you don't get to talent in the door, right? He feels like a really nice piece. And let's go look at a Coach Letton, the tight ends coach. What has he done? Well, you bring in a Grant Steck. That was a major 4-star win. Nizee Davis last year's cycle. And this year you have Jack Janda and Jack Severs, right? Pretty good right there too. And then go look at Coach Guyton, the quarterbacks coach, obviously receivers coach last year, got moved over to quarterbacks coach. Another guy that we were told and we've talked about, really, really good human being, is going to connect with players, is going to connect with people, is going to be a really good recruiter. Helped get Carter Smith last cycle, 4-star player that flipped from Michigan after they got Underwood. That's a big win. Carter Smith I love him. I love Carter Smith. I love the cut of his jib. He is the right type of intangible plus athletic. And then Ryan Hopkins this year, you're getting a dynamic young quarterback that can move, has a big arm, is over at Mater Dei right now. That's pretty interesting stuff when you start to look at the individual wins these positional coaches and this recruiting department have stacked up the last couple of years, and then think with this House committee ruling, which I think is going to help Wisconsin. That's what we've been told as well. With this program, potentially, if it can get some traction and pull itself out of the mud a little bit with the recruiting wins that they've been starting to stack up, that could get to another gear. You go over to defense, Jack Cooper, Coach Coop, people love him. I Again, and it's not always the players that commit. Like I talked to a lot of players that commit or they were interested but they didn't quite do it. They still rave about Coach Coop. They still rave about the coaches on the staff. They're putting the coaches on the staff are putting the Badgers in a spot in a position to win a lot of really tough battles and not winning them all, but putting themselves in a position at times punching above the historical weight class that Wisconsin has battled in recruiting. They jumped a weight class in some areas. And in some of them, they're landing the knockout blows, right? You go back to, again, the recent commitments of Petit and Latimer. Those are knockout blows. Those are massive recruiting wins. And this staff is really starting to coalesce around kind of a pretty young, dynamic, energized core, supported obviously by Pat Lambert and his recruiting team, which is really good as well. It's interesting. It's exciting. And you still have guys like Matt Mitchell, who resonates really well with players. Has helped land guys like Posa and Nicholas Clayton, along with Heiberger and some of those pieces. There's a lot of reasons to be interesting, or a lot of reasons to be kind of excited about this recruiting staff right now and some of the momentum they've put together. So I don't, again, it's part of the battle. It's not the whole battle for sure. You still now have to develop them. You have to coach them. You have to scheme it up. You have to do the X's and O's. You have to continue working on making them into the players they're going to be 3 to 4 years after they step foot on campus. And you got to keep them, right? All those things matter. All of that matters. You can get all the stars in the world. If you don't do the other things, it doesn't matter. But you can do all the other things. And if you don't get the talent, it doesn't matter either. So people talk a lot about, yeah, super exciting. We got Pettit and Petit and Latimer, but are you going to hang on to them? I would say you can't worry about hanging on to them until you get them. So you can't worry about the second part of that if you don't do the first part. So they've done the first part, and you have to give them credit for that. They've won some massive battles. Now, are they going to hang on to them? We'll see. I would argue no program hangs on to everybody they want to hang on to anymore. Xavier Lucas was a prime example of that. But they've done a pretty good job of hanging on to most of them, haven't they? You look at guys like the running backs, or a guy like Tretch, or a guy like Vinny Anthony, or a guy like Ricardo Holman. They've had other guys who could have left, and they've done a pretty good job, all in all, in hanging on to those guys. So I wouldn't worry too much about it. All right, coming up, let's talk Tanjay, let's talk Crowd, let's talk NBA, and let's talk Greg Gard. That's coming up next, Locked On Badgers. First, a quick second for our friends of the show over at Monarch Money. Monarch Money is a great spot if you need to bring all your financial accounts, everything together. It acts kind of like a personal CFO, and it is phenomenal. Let's be a little bit better with our money. Let's do it with less stress. Let's do it with less hassle. Let's do it with less tabs open and spreadsheets and all these things. Monarch Money can do it all for you, right? They have everything in one spot, so you don't have to navigate a bunch of places, remember a bunch of passwords, get frustrated, annoyed, and then just not do it because it's too painful. We can't afford to not take care of our money. We can't afford to not track our money. Monarch Money brings it all together, all your statements. You can plan collaboratively with your partner. This is something I use because I love the visual readouts of the data. It is phenomenal. It is easy, and it is helping me save money. Let it help you save money too. Let it help you make goals, budgets, and planners for your money. Right now, head over to Monarch Money. Take control of your finances. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONCollege for half off your first year. Okay. NBA draft. John Tanjay, congratulations, man. Let's pause here and talk a little bit, reflect a little bit on the journey of John Big Dude Tanjay, pick number 53 with the Utah Jazz in the most recent NBA draft. So a second round pick, but bona fide NBA draft pick, man. And what a journey. First of all, great for him to go to Utah after almost single-handedly ending, BYU season. I'm sure there's some BYU fans who are going to remember that, which I think is kind of cool. And it's just a guy who, credit to him and credit to Greg Gard. You can't separate those two things. This is a player who came in, and I can tell you from people I talked to in the program, completely selfless, put the team first, embraced the culture right away. One of the best seasons offensive seasons in Wisconsin history, and an All-American, just incredible season in every aspect. And you got to give it to him for continuing to grind and get better and you know, work his way into this position, because coming into this year, nobody would have considered an NBA draft pick. And now he was on every mock draft. Nobody considers this a reach. And, there's some Utah Jazz people that are pretty excited about his shooting ability and his ability to translate into the NBA. That's a massive credit to him. Utah Jazz president of player development, Avery Bradley, who a lot of people know that name, said, "We're excited to add him to our team. We feel like not only is he going to bring a lot of leadership, he has great strength, great shooting ability. He's a very smart player. He played extremely well when he came in for our workout." Yeah, no, that's shocking, right? All of that checks with every single thing we saw from Tanje last year. Great to add him to the team. Mature, team guy, great strength, great shooter. We saw it all year long. So congratulations to John Tanje and an incredible journey. He continues to say, quote, Avery Bradley, I think at the age he's at, he's improved every single year. He knows and he understands what it takes to fight through adversity. So I think he can add a lot to our younger players with that perspective. Yeah, total team guy. Is he going to stick in the NBA? He's going to have to be able to get his shot off, and he's going to have to be able to play defense. And I don't know. It's tough for anybody to stick in the NBA. There's lottery picks. I mean, we talked about Johnny Davis, sadly, and he wasn't able to stick in the NBA with more athleticism than John Tanje. So it's tough for anybody to do that, but I hope so. And he deserves it, and it would be great for Wisconsin. And also, on this one, credit to Greg Gard, right? Credit to Greg Gard for recognizing that talent, bringing him in, and building a system that John Tanje was able to use to elevate himself into this position. It's just a win-win. That's a win-win for Gard, for Tanje, for the Badgers. I think for the Utah Jazz too, because you're bringing in somebody who is mature and is going to fit right in and is going to work hard. And he is going to be a great example to some of the younger players that they've drafted and some of the younger pieces that they have. So just phenomenal stuff, man. Phenomenal stuff. And Steven Crowell. Let's talk about my guy, Big Steve, who I'm telling you, I said it halfway through the year. I'm like, don't be surprised if some NBA team picks him up on like a 10-day, a 2-way contract, signs him as a UDFA, because there's just not very many big men who can walk, pass, and shoot at the same time. There's not many 7-footers who have this skill level of Steven Crowell. And I am so excited, man. I saw Steven Crowell signed a 10-day exhibit contract, which can be converted down the road to a 2-way contract. I'm not fully sure exactly how that works, but he's going to the Utah Jazz as well. So the Jazz are going to have John Tanje. Definitely he's going to go to the summer league, and potentially we'll see where that goes. But they're also giving Steven Crowell a shot. And for a player that at times was maligned, for a player that Greg Gard had to kind of call out at one point to be a little more aggressive, this is also a player that had a tremendous 4-year career for the Badgers. And it's a player that is selfless, team-oriented, very much a Badger in all the ways we want Wisconsin Badger guys to be from a character standpoint. And for him to get a shot in the NBA, it's not shocking to me at all. In fact, I said I would be surprised if some team didn't kick the tires there, because the NBA doesn't have enough big men. No league has enough big men, right? So I'm not surprised they're going to kick the tires on it. We'll see. Defensively, it's going to be a bit of a struggle for Steven Crowell. We know that. He's not going to be able to switch and go onto the perimeter with NBA athletes. So he's going to have to survive in kind of a drop coverage role. And he's not very good at challenging shots at the rim. So we'll see. But just the fact that he's getting that opportunity is awesome. I'm stoked for him. And I hope he crushes it, right? I hope he crushes it. I hope John Tanje crushes it. And a kudos to Greg Gard on both of them, right? Tanje, you have Greg Gard and the influence of finding him late in the process, convincing him to come to Wisconsin, fitting him into this system, this scheme, and then basically letting him cook. And Greg Gard and Kirk Penny get a lot of credit for that. And with Steven Crowell, Greg Gard and Kirk Penny and everyone is in, really everyone that has worked in that player development room. Crowell's gotten better and better, skilled player. And yeah, it's just a massive kudos to both of those guys and the program. And I'm really excited to see where they potentially could go. Let's take a couple questions or comments or thoughts. This is from the YouTube chat. So this is from Leland Buss. He says, imagine if Hopkins sits his ceiling along with Latimer and Petit, something to look forward to. When have we ever landed 3 skill positions like that in 1 year, and one being a quarterback? I love this because I did a kind of a comparison of when have we ever landed 2 guys like Latimer and Petit in the same room. But then you throw in a Hopkins. There's no denying it. The skill level that this recruiting department has brought in and is bringing in is at another level. Now, I'll say it again. You got to develop them, and it doesn't mean you win games because you bring in skill talent. Now you got to develop them and coach them. But I think Brady Collins is pretty good at doing that too. So I feel good about it. Micah says, be more interested when they sign on the dotted line. Yeah, again, this goes back to the idea of how excited do you want to get for recruits now when we live in a transfer portal era, when we live in an era where people move more. I would just say if you're not going to get excited about these things, then I don't know what you're going to get excited about in recruiting necessarily. But I don't hate it if you want to wait or if you're not going to jump for joy. Everyone's going to look at this differently, and I think, in my perspective, these are the type of wins that if you follow recruiting, these are the type of wins you get excited for. But I hear you. If you want to wait, there's nothing wrong with that. I got you, Micah. Greg Else, talking of Kinzinger, he says his time on the floor will be directly proportional to how well he plays defense. Yeah, he's going to have to I like this comment from Greg because I don't know who our backup ball handler is right now. And so certainly Kinzinger is going to have to play defense to play for Greg Gard and the Badgers. But did we play a ton of defense last year at times? I'm not disagreeing with Greg at all on this, but they gave up a bunch of straight line drives last year. My point in all this is they may need him regardless of, as long as he's not a disaster defensively. I don't think he will be, by the way. They may need him because I don't know who the backup ball handler is. I don't think it's Braden Carrington. I just don't know if that's his bag. So I think Kins may have to play anyway because is Janicki your backup ball handler? Maybe. He's got a good feel. He's going to have to get a lot better to be that guy, though. It might have to be Kins just because I don't know who else it would be. So I hear you on the defense, but it might have to be Kins. Prime Fan says Garlock might have to play out of necessity. Depends on what they do. They're trying to get one more big. And if they do, I think they're going to be okay in the front court. And Garlock can redshirt. And I think Garlock I really like the physical tools of Will Garlock, the 7-foot in-state center. I think a redshirt for him would be great. I really do. He missed time with injury in high school. His team played a lot of 2-3 zone. I think it's going to take a little while to get to the defensive level. And it's more important as your center to be solid defensively than a guy like Kins who can come in and be the backup ball handler. It might be a year for Garlock still, I think. Mr. October, Hopkins is staying in this class. Hopkins retweeted the Amari Latimer commitment note, which I thought was interesting. And I mentioned this before, the more big pieces you add to this, the better it's going to look for a quarterback. Ryan Hopkins is who he's referencing. That's the 2026 quarterback who is out in modern day. The more pieces you can put in this class to make it exciting for a quarterback, the more weapons you can give them, the more offensive line you can give them, the more marquee talent you can add, the more attractive it's going to be for him to stay. And it's like all things in life. People want to be surrounded by talent. That you want that whether you're working professionally for a company, if you're in the NFL, if you're in college, you want that if you're playing fives on the park, right? You want the best people around you. So I think him retweeting that, he sees the talent that's coming in, and it's a good note from Mr. October for sure. All right, we're going to wrap it there. Again, short show today. I'm traveling, so this is kind of pre-recorded, but wanted to say on Wisconsin, appreciate you guys jumping in. Big kudos to John Tonje and Stephen Crowell, and really excited about the young recruiters on this football coaching staff. All of that today. Thank you so much for tuning in. As always, hope everyone's safe and having an incredible summer on Wisconsin, and we will talk later.